Now we're going to learn about some fundamental programming concepts and some concepts that are specific to Python. You remember that restaurant bill that we talked about in the last video? There were a few things that we wanted to know: the bill amount, the tax and the tip, and then we were going to find out what the total bill is. Well, we need somewhere to store the information about all of these values, and that's where variables come in. A variable is a name storage location that can hold data. Think of all of the plastic bins in your garage. Each one of the bins has a label on it, and if you open up the bin, it probably has all of your valuable treasures inside of it. You can think of the label on the box as the name of the variable, and you can think of the items inside of it as the values that are actually being stored. So what variables do we need for this program? We're probably going to need some kind of bill amount, a tax and a tip rate, an actual tax and a tip so that we can add it to the subtotal and finally have a total bill. But before we actually generate these variables, there's a few things that we need to know. Variables and objects within programming languages have naming conventions. The first one is that we can only use letters, underscores, and numbers. So first name is invalid because of the space. Name exclamation point is invalid, well, because of the exclamation point. The next thing is that the name must begin with a letter. So second place is invalid because it begins with a 2. I can have numbers in there. I could say place 2, or I could spell out the word second, and that would be valid. The next one is we want to use description names. So 100 lines of code later, variable 1, variable 2, variable 3 are not very descriptive. To that end, if I need a couple of words in order to be descriptive in my variable name, I'm going to use either underscore or camel case. So first underscore name, if you'll notice back to rule 1, it said we can use underscores. And then the first name, this is camel case, where the first letter of each word is capitalized. In a variable, the first word is going to be lowercase, and every word after that would have the first letter capitalized. So the next one is that we cannot use Python reserved words. We're going to see that class is a reserved word. Here is an example of Python 3 reserved words. If you look through this list, you can see the word class. Now you can use a reserved word in a variable name, such as CS1030 class or class 1945, but the word itself cannot be the variable name. So let's come back to my restaurant bill. Let's see if we can determine what I might call these variables that I'm going to use. I could call this bill amount or subtotal. We could call this tax and tip rate. I'm going to use camel case in these. I personally use camel case for one reason, because I cannot find the underscore on my keyboard to save my life, but I can always find the shift key. So I prefer the camel case. So we're going to have tax and tip, and then finally we're going to have some kind of a total bill or a bill total, something like that. Now, these variables we're going to see are going to contain values, right? And so each one of the different variables can have a different data type. So in Python, 4 of the data types that we're going to be learning about, one is a whole number, one is a floating point, the next one, Boolean, contains true or false, and then we have strings, which is alphanumeric text. And because we're going to be doing some calculations, we probably need some math operators. And if you'll notice at the bottom of the slide, there are some shortcuts that we'll be learning about to these math operators. And we're also going to learn about relational operators such as greater than, less than. And then we're also going to learn about logic operators, and, or, and not. The next thing we're going to talk about is the flow of a program. So the first flow is sequential. It just starts from the top and it works its way down. The next one is invocation. If I ask the user for the bill amount and I print the total to the screen, I didn't write the code on how to ask a user something or how to print something to the screen. So I'm going to call or invoke code that somebody else has written in order to be able to do that. The next program flow is branching. So if I want to change the tip rate based upon how much they've spent, or if I want to give them free appetizers based upon how many people are in the room, I would use branching to do that. Then looping would say, this is fun. Let's just do the whole entire thing over again. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to write the exact same program in 3 different languages. If you have ever been curious to know the difference between Java and C++ and Python, that is the next video.